Hey guys, tonight we begin somewhere far from your couch or cozy bed. Though ironically, it all starts with a gathering not too different from the cookout you might have skipped last weekend. Imagine standing barefoot on cool, sun-baked stone as dawn spills over the top of the Templomare. The drums are already pounding, deep and slow, like the earth itself has a pulse. You smell roasted maize in the air, sweet, nutty, and something else. Something metallic. Something warm. You're in the heart of Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital, and breakfast is about to begin. Of course, this isn't the kind of breakfast you'll find at a roadside diner, unless your local menu includes flayed prisoners, incense made of crushed beetles, and ceremonial tamales dyed in sacred blue. This morning, like every festival morning, you are reminded that appetite isn't just about hunger. It's about power. About who gets fed, who does the feeding, and who becomes the meal. And no offense, but you probably wouldn't survive this. Not because you're soft, but because you're not ready to understand how deep food runs in the bones of civilization. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing how far this weird little community stretches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand at the edge of the plaza, just outside the path of flower petals being scattered by children dressed as hummingbirds. The dancers wear headdresses taller than your torso, their ankle shells clacking as they circle in rhythm. And in the center, looming above it all, is the Great Pyramid, with its twin temples dedicated to Tlaloc, god of rain, and Huitzilopochtli, god of war. A cozy combo, if you're into agriculture and combat. You're not the only one watching. Thousands are here. The market's closed, the streets are empty. This is the main event. The emperor is seated under a canopy of gold-threaded cloth. Nobles sip chocolate from painted cups. And the smell... Yes, you notice it now. Charred bone, smoked pepper, sweat, all mingling in a perfume that screams both feast and funeral. Here's the thing. Aztec culture didn't separate food and faith the way we do. For them, eating was a sacred act. Every kernel of corn, every strip of meat was part of a larger cosmic balance. So, when the high priest raises his obsidian blade and the crowd falls silent, you understand. You're not just watching a sacrifice, you're watching a meal begin. The beating heart lifted toward the sun isn't just a gory showstopper. It's breakfast for the gods. Historians still argue whether human flesh was consumed regularly or only symbolically. But what's clear is this. The offering had to be fresh, and the gods had to be fed first. You know, courtesy. There's a rhythm to the event. It's not just violence, it's choreography. As one body is offered, another is prepared. Tamales are steamed in underground pits. Dogs, yes, they ate dogs, are roasted and basted with chili sauces. Maize is ground into tortillas with a kind of prayerful calm. And somewhere nearby, a clay bowl steams with a stew no one talks about in polite company. Now here's a quirky tidbit you might enjoy. Some sources suggest that during the height of festival season, noble families competed not only in what they wore or whom they brought, but what they served. Your neighbor might host a rooftop banquet with cacao pudding and salted ant eggs. You better bring roasted parrot and fermented maguey sap. No pressure. The feasting doesn't start until the gods have had their fill. Only then do the people eat. There's an eerie calm in that pause, a collective breath held. And then, like a gust of wind catching fire, the city comes alive. Fires roar, drums quicken. Everyone moves, dancing, ladling, chewing, laughing. You're swept into a line where a stranger presses a chili-dusted squash blossom into your hand. You eat it without thinking. It's delicious, and maybe a little too warm. It's easy to romanticize this moment. The music, the sun, the community. But don't forget, this is also a test, a trial by appetite. For young warriors, eating during these rituals was a mark of readiness. Could you swallow down a stew spiced with pain and memory? Could you consume without flinching? One Spanish friar wrote of a feast where the honored guest was served a bread effigy of a god, shaped like a man, painted with blood, and eaten limb by limb while the crowd sang lullabies. Did they believe they were devouring divinity? Maybe. Or maybe, like you, they just wanted to be part of something bigger than themselves. You sit now, full but unsettled, watching dancers spin under a rain of marigold petals. Somewhere, a flute plays a haunting note. You close your eyes. And suddenly, you're not in Tenochtitlan anymore. You're at a summer fair. Someone's announcing a pie-eating contest over a crackling speaker. The smells are different. Funnel cake, sunscreen, spilled lemonade. But the ritual feels eerily familiar. The speakers crackle again, and this time the announcer's voice rises above the chatter like a carnival deity calling you to attention. 10 minutes on the clock, folks. Get ready to cheer these brave eaters on. You blink under the neon buzz of vendor lights. The drumbeat is gone, but replaced, oddly enough, by a pounding bass from the corn dog stand's Bluetooth speaker. There's a guy in a foam hat shaped like a hamburger. A woman in a hot dog costume is handing out free ketchup packets. Somehow it's all a little too familiar. You drift toward the main tent, drawn by instinct more than choice. Like earlier, there's a crowd, a center stage, and the electric tension of something about to begin. This time, no obsidian knives, no temple priests, just folding chairs and picnic tables lined with metal trays. But make no mistake, what you're about to witness still qualifies as a sacred rite. And maybe, just maybe, a kind of sacrifice. The competitors take their seats. One guy is bouncing in place like he's about to run a marathon. Another stares blankly at his tray of chili dogs, muttering under his breath like a monk preparing for a fast. Except, this isn't about abstaining. It's about conquering. Their god isn't Huitzilopochtli. It's the ticking timer above the stage. Back in the Aztec plaza, the gods were fed first. Here, the gods are the viewers. Everyone with a phone. Everyone streaming on Twitch or TikTok or YouTube shorts. The camera light is the new sacred fire. And the food? Well, the food is abundant. Piled high, steam curls off plastic trays like incense. But make no mistake, it isn't lovingly prepared like the tamales wrapped in agave leaves or the slow-roasted turkey steeped in mole sauce. This is fast, greasy, loud food. Spectacle food. Bread not for breaking, but for stuffing. Still, you can't look away. The announcer counts down. 3, 2, 1, go! And suddenly the air splits open. Napkins fly, buns vanish, cheeks puff like bullfrogs in mating season. And you realize, this isn't so different from the Aztec offering. The crowd roars, hands clap in rhythm. Every swallowed hot dog is a small, strange miracle. It's messy, it's absurd, and it's exactly what the people came for. Historians still argue whether Aztec human sacrifices were meant more to inspire fear or foster unity. Were they about keeping order or venting chaos in controlled doses? Was the feast more about power or belonging? Likewise, modern competitive eating sparks debate. Is it a celebration of freedom and bodily mastery, or just a performance of grotesque indulgence for mass entertainment? And here's a fringe tidbit to chew on. There's a documented case of a competitive eater who trained using watermelons filled with sand. Why? To simulate the volume and weight of real food without the calories. You know, like boot camp for your stomach. Ancient warriors trained with heavier wooden swords before wielding obsidian ones in battle. Now we train with sand fruit. Progress? Back under the tent, the competitors' faces contort with each bite. One guy's left eye is twitching. Another is crying, though no one can tell if it's from emotion or jalapenos. In ancient times, tears during feasting were seen as sacred signs, evidence of spiritual connection or ancestral memory. Here, it's just dehydration and regret. Still, there's something beautiful about the absurdity. You feel the crowd swell with shared energy. Strangers chant a name. Children on shoulders point and scream. The rhythm builds, not with drums this time, but with the slap of hands against the table, the squeal of folding chairs, the countdown of the final seconds. 10, 9, 8! You feel yourself yelling too. 3, 2, 1. A whistle blows. Chaos collapses into silence. The competitors lean back in their seats. Some look triumphant. Others like they've aged 10 years. One guy is holding his stomach like he's shielding a mortal wound. Another is smiling through burps, hands raised like a victorious warrior from a forgotten myth. You watch the winner hoist a plastic trophy shaped like a chili pepper. Confetti rains down. Somewhere, a camera zooms in. Somewhere else, a meme is born. You wonder if he'll be remembered, if his name will echo in future stories. Like the Aztec captives who feasted before meeting the blade, elevated not for what they consumed, but for what they endured. You step back, away from the noise, into a pocket of shadow, near a stand selling deep-fried Oreos. It's quieter here. A child drops a funnel cake, powdered sugar scattering like ancient ash. You inhale and think, this, too, is a kind of offering. Food that ends up on the ground. Effort that ends in bloating. Moments that blur into ritual. We may not be at the temple anymore, but we're still in the presence of something sacred, ridiculous, and deeply, deeply human. Now that your ears have stopped ringing from the applause and your stomach has begun to feel a little queasy in sympathy, you find yourself drifting into a question you hadn't meant to ask. What exactly was on the Aztec menu? You're not just curious. You're unsettled. Because while modern competitive eating is mostly greasy, sugary excess, Aztec feasting had layers. Layers of ceremony, mythology, and culinary skill. And layers of things you might not want to bite into. You stroll through the imagined market again, this time as a guest. Not a warrior, not a sacrifice. Just someone holding a maize leaf plate, your fingers sticky from honey and squash seeds. You pause at a vendor slicing turkey breast into strips, seasoning it with chile and epizot. It smells divine. He offers you a bite. You nod. And then he offers you something else. A tamale, warm and soft. Only this one has a curious symbol painted in blue corn. The priest beside you leans in and whispers, "This was the honored one." You freeze. See, one of the stranger truths about Aztec feast culture was that it blurred the line between nourishment and worship. Some sources, even if hotly debated, suggest that during certain festivals, ritual human flesh was consumed in small, symbolic amounts. A limb might be cooked and shared only among the priesthood, while dough effigies shaped like gods were consumed by the masses. Not exactly your average buffet. Historians still argue whether cannibalism was common practice or exaggerated by the Spaniards to justify conquest. The truth, like so many things wrapped in banana leaves, may be more nuanced. Some argue the meat was symbolic, shaped from amaranth dough and blood, yes, but not human tissue. Others point to skeletal remains with cut marks and hearth ash patterns that suggest something a little more literal. It's tempting to recoil. But let's linger, gently. Because in Aztec cosmology, consumption wasn't grotesque. It was reciprocal. You fed the gods with your devotion, and sometimes with your body. In return, the gods fed the earth, the maize, the rain, and on rare occasions, they fed you back through blessed meat that carried power, memory, and divine heat. Now, before you swear off tamales forever, here's a softer fact. Most Aztec feasts involve things you would eat today. Turkey, beans, pumpkin seeds, roasted corn, avocado, spiced cacao, freshwater fish cooked in stone pits. The kind of menu you'd find at a trendy fusion restaurant with too much ambient lighting. And the food wasn't just practical. It was art. Textures, colors, layers of spice. Banquets were curated, and cooks, often women, were revered for their skill. The fringe tidbit here? They also made insect caviar. No joke. Tiny eggs harvested from aquatic insects, seasoned and served with toast-like cakes. High protein, low fat, and, surprisingly, still eaten in parts of Mexico today. Chalk it up as ancestral keto, you look down at your imaginary plate and realize how vivid this all feels. The way the masa sticks to your teeth. The tang of lime soaked in chili powder. A hint of cacao bitterness under the sweetness. If you blur your modern palate, you can almost believe this food tastes like reverence. And then, suddenly, you're back in the present. A competitive eater just posted a video titled, "I ate a 24-pound burrito in 11 minutes. My doctor cried." You tap it. You can't help yourself. There he is sitting at a diner booth, sweating before the meal even begins. The plate is the size of a car tire. His audience, just like yours, waits in hushed anticipation. And what's on that plate? Rice, beans, steak, guacamole, sour cream. A modern pyramid of abundance, but with none of the symbolism. None of the prayer. And yet, somehow, it still feels sacred. In a strange upside-down way. Because here's the parallel. Food today still makes meaning. Not cosmic meaning, maybe, but algorithmic meaning. Views, likes, ad revenue, prestige among eaters, clout among fans. The burrito isn't just food. It's content. The act of eating becomes a digital ceremony. And when the eater takes that first impossible bite, the crowd watching from phones and tablets offers their own kind of incense. Emojis, comments, donations. You begin to realize that these modern feasts aren't replacing the old rituals. They're refracting them. Same hunger, different gods. Same offering, different altar. You scroll to the comments section. Someone's typed, "This man is a machine." Another, "Honestly, I'm crying. This is beautiful." And a third, lost deep in the replies. I wonder if his ancestors would be proud. Would they? Who knows? But as the video ends, and the camera pans out from the half-eaten burrito, the bloated champion, and the ketchup-stained table, you can't help but wonder if something divine just passed through. Briefly, on its way to indigestion, you take a breath. Maybe a sip of water. Something to rinse the image of that monstrous burrito from your mind. But the feeling lingers. The sense that somehow, the act of watching someone consume so much so quickly meant something. That it scratched some ancient itch beneath your skin, and then it hits you. It's not just the food, it's how it's eaten, publicly, loudly, like a dance or a duel. You remember the crowd under the Aztec sun, leaning in as the chosen warriors offered their final breath, and then, as the fire was lit, leaning even closer for the feast. Not just to eat, but to witness it. That moment when flesh met flame, when sacred became sensory. And now? You're watching a guy unhinge his jaw like a python to inhale a stack of glazed donuts in front of 50,000 live viewers. It's entertainment, yes. But also, oddly devotional. Let's call this what it is: public devouring as ritual.
In ancient Tenochtitlan, festivals could last days. People traveled from the countryside to witness the spectacle. Sacrifices were central, yes, but so were the meals. Communal, rhythmic. Everything from food preparation to chewing pace had a flow. You didn't just grab a drumstick and wander off. You participated, you watched, you honored.
The crowd didn't eat in private. They sat in rows. They shared maize cakes. They passed bowls of pulque, fermented agave sap that went down smoother than it should. They clapped to the beat of flutes and bone-strapped drums. Even the act of swallowing was part of the performance. Historians still argue whether these gatherings were primarily about religious obligation or social cohesion. Were the gods the intended audience? Or was it each other? Neighbors, rulers, friends, rivals, performing for one another in a shared theater of taste. It's the same question people ask today. When you live stream yourself devouring 15 Egg McMuffins, is it self-expression or audience service? Are you pushing the limits of human appetite or just trying to go viral? And here's a fringe detail to spice things up. Some Aztec festivals required participants to eat specific foods in choreographed steps. Imagine being handed a tamale and told to chew 5 times, then sing a line from a sacred hymn, then swallow only after your left foot touched the ground twice. No one just ate. They performed the feast. Now zoom out. Think about today's competitive eaters. YouTube thumbnails with bulging eyes, glistening meat stacks, and captions like "Insane Eating Challenge." There's a dance there too. A visual rhythm. Slurp, chew, slap the table, high five, grimace. Every bite is an act in a larger performance.
And the audience? You, me, everyone in the comments section, we're part of the ritual too. We offer digital incense, likes, subscriptions, fire emojis, and shocked face reactions. We chant with our keyboards. You got this. Let's go. He's not human. Our attention isn't passive. It feeds the moment. Somewhere along the way, the idea of eating became detached from quiet necessity. It became a stage act. The transformation was already underway in Aztec culture. And now, it's in full HD.
Here's a weird connection for you. In both cultures, the performers often enter a kind of trance. Aztec priests spoke of spiritual possession during feasts, their bodies swaying, voices rising, the food becoming a vessel of divine energy. Today, eaters speak of the zone, where time slows, pain fades, and only the rhythm of the bite remains. One modern champ described it as a blackout of focus. He doesn't remember the middle of his performances, just the start and the sudden, bloated end. That's not digestion. That's devotion.
And isn't there something vaguely religious about it? The attire, the audience, the repetition. Even the way the food is arranged has meaning. Piles of uniform dumplings, rows of color-coded wings, a kind of edible altar, lit not by candles but by camera flashes and ring lights.
You remember how, in the last section, we touched on the symbolic dishes in Aztec rituals. Food shaped like gods, dyed to represent rivers or blood or stars. Well, that tradition hasn't vanished. It's just changed platforms. In modern eating contests, the food becomes symbolic of scale, of absurdity, of dominance. A 12-foot burrito isn't just lunch. It's a sermon, a dare, a joke, a myth. You lean against a railing, watching a clip where a petite woman demolishes a 7-pound sushi roll. The crowd is rapt. Someone behind the camera gasps, "She's incredible. She's a goddess." You can't help but smile, because once, long ago, people whispered the same thing beside a temple.
So what happens after the final bite? Does the crowd scatter? Do the gods retreat?
No. They cheer. They take selfies with the champion. They ask for merch. They replay the highlights.
You realize the feast doesn't end when the food is gone. It ends when the memory is made, when the performance is complete, when the ritual, however absurd, finds its shape and echo.
And in that moment, whether you're standing barefoot on temple stone or scrolling on a cracked phone screen, the hunger isn't just for food. It's for meaning.
You shift your weight, still half leaning against that imaginary railing, watching the crowd disperse with nacho cheese on their sleeves and admiration in their voices. But something's still gnawing at you. Something primal. Maybe a little ridiculous. Why is appetite so heroic? Why does devouring absurd amounts of food earn applause, even awe? And what made it heroic back then, under the smoky feathers of Aztec priests?
It's time we talked about the stomach of a warrior.
In Aztec society, eating wasn't just about sustenance. It was a declaration of strength. And not just physical strength, spiritual, political, and even sexual vitality. A full belly meant you had access, power, maybe even divine favor. After all, if you were weak or low in rank, you didn't eat well. If you were important, you feasted. Lavishly. And often with an audience. Young men were trained not just to fight, but to consume with dignity and stamina. Historians still argue whether certain elite initiations included ritual overeating. But what's known is this. Warriors earned feasts, and feasts earned warriors. You didn't sit at the high table until you returned from battle with proof. Scars, captives, maybe a particularly flashy helmet. The fringe fact? Some ceremonies link specific dishes to specific military victories. Bring home a high-ranking prisoner? You might be served deer roasted in honey and wild herbs. Triumph over a rebel province? That called for spicy pumpkin stew and dancing. So yes, conquest had a flavor. Several, actually. Today we've somehow kept that idea alive.
Consider the modern eating champ. The way we treat them like warriors of consumption. They wear wristbands instead of obsidian armor. They fight not on battlefields, but on diner counters and live streams. But still, we cheer as they conquer an impossible portion, as they raise a fork like it's a spear and face the challenge with, you guessed it, a stomach of iron. You watch a video of a guy tackling 100 McNuggets in 10 minutes. The crowd is roaring. A DJ is playing. There are flashing lights, and a guy in a chicken costume throwing high fives. It's not just eating. It's combat theater, minus the bruises. Well, at least the visible ones.
And there's something else. Something a little uncomfortable. You notice how the crowd praises endurance. Not taste, not grace, just sheer volume. The biggest eaters are framed like survivors of battle. And you start to hear the echo again, back in that ancient plaza where warriors were given a final feast before being sacrificed. A last meal? Yes. But also a public proof of worth. If you could eat like a king, you were one. Even if only for a night. One historical account, possibly exaggerated, but let's enjoy the drama, tells of a captured warrior who, before his final ascent to the altar, was given an entire roasted dog, 3 maize cakes, and a fermented cactus brew. He allegedly finished the whole thing with a grin and asked for seconds. Did he really? Maybe. Or maybe someone needed him to seem fearless to make the ritual complete.
Fast forward to today. A woman finishes an entire cheesecake in under 4 minutes. She wipes her mouth, burps softly, waves. The crowd loses its collective mind.
The applause isn't for speed, it's for swagger. That's what they came to see.
Now here's where the comparison gets even more fun. In Aztec culture, stomach strength wasn't just a metaphor. It was linked to spiritual purity. You were what you consumed. If you ate the wrong food before a ritual, you could ruin the offering. If you ate too little, weak. Too much,
undisciplined. The ideal warrior had to know when to fast, when to feast, and how to hold it all with dignity.
Modern eaters, they train too. They fast. Then they stretch their stomachs with gallons of water. They map out digestion speeds like generals plotting a siege. There's math involved, science, strategy, and most of all, grit, the kind you can't fake. One guy, interviewed post-competition, whispered, "You have to love the pain." A priest in ancient Tenochtitlan might have said the same thing, just with more feathers.
And the reward? Back then, honor. A place in songs, maybe your name carved into a codex. Today, a sponsorship deal. A feature on the Explore page. A trophy shaped like a giant meatball. Glory is glory, even when it smells like hot sauce and regret. You sit back and think about all the ways we still treat food as a test. Ever hear someone say, "Real men can handle spice"? Or, "Only legends finish the triple stack burger"? That's not dinner. That's ritual performance disguised as fast, casual dining. It's absurd. It's hilarious. It's timeless. And as another video autoplay loads, a guy about to attempt 50 hard-boiled eggs in a single sitting, you almost want to light a candle and say a prayer.
Because whether he succeeds or collapses halfway through, he's about to step onto an ancient path, stomach first, into history.
The smell hits you first. Grease, sugar, a faint damp scent of old sweat and anticipation. It's the fairgrounds at sunset, and you're standing in line, watching people take selfies in front of a banner that reads, "The 10 lb Burrito Challenge, Win or Explode." Someone in the crowd is dressed as a burrito. It's unclear whether they work here or just are that person. Either way, you're mesmerized. This is no ordinary meal. This is a clocked confrontation, and it's got rules, a referee, and a giant blinking countdown timer. Just like a duel, only with refried beans.
You probably don't think of yourself as a warrior or a time-bound ceremonial figure. But that's exactly the role this event casts on every eater who steps up. It's you versus the ticking minutes. Just like the Aztecs used to do. You heard that right. In Aztec rituals, time pressure wasn't some theatrical twist. It was sacred. Everything from sacrifices to dances to feasts followed strict calendrical timing. There were designated feast days where food had to be consumed in a precise order, in specific quantities, during tightly measured intervals. If the offering ran late, the gods might get offended. And you didn't want to see a god in a bad mood. Historians still argue whether these strict mealtime rites were more for spiritual alignment or for crowd control. After all, when thousands are gathered around a burning pyramid, someone has to keep the snacks on schedule. But here's where it gets deliciously weird.
Some high ceremonies involve speed eating, though not in the way you'd think. Certain honored guests were served bizarrely elaborate dishes that were meant to be consumed rapidly, before they cooled, congealed, or lost symbolic power. And to refuse food? That was scandalous. There were rumors that some nobles deliberately failed these rapid banquets to protest the ruling priesthood, effectively making a political statement through indigestion. Flash forward to today, and you've got people voluntarily sprinting through a plate of ghost pepper wings, while a crowd screams in ecstasy.
You're watching one now. An exhausted man mid-battle with a spicy ramen challenge. The timer reads 1:44. He's sweating, eyes glassy. You can almost hear his ancestors whispering, "You've come this far. Don't disgrace the clan." Tick, tick, tick.
Then a gag, a moment of stillness, a twitch. The audience gasps. And just like that, we're in the theater of ancient tension. Only now there's Wi-Fi. Modern competitive eaters often describe entering a zone, a flow state. They don't taste much. They barely see the crowd. All they hear is the rhythm of chewing, the slosh of soda used to lube the throat, and the announcer's voice counting down their fate. 1 second too slow, and it's all over. You lose. You failed the challenge. And the burrito mascot mockingly dabs in the background.
It's ridiculous, but it's also kind of beautiful. Because it's human. You've always had this thing with ritual and the clock. Think about weddings, funerals, football games, first dates. Time gives structure, purpose, stakes, and nothing adds drama like a visible countdown. Ancient Aztec priests knew that. So do the folks running today's TikTok burger gauntlets. Quirky fringe fact? There's a historical record of a priest who once prepared a ritual dish so spicy it made half the guests faint. Not from flavor, but from the sheer pressure of having to finish it within 13 heartbeats of the drum. That's right. Mealtime met metronome. And if you thought your microwave beep was aggressive,
These ancient timed meals weren't just ceremonies. They were tests. Endurance, obedience, and performance. All wrapped in corn tortillas and fire-roasted anxiety.
and just like today, the spectators loved it.
Back then, they cheered as nobles struggled. Laughed when someone hiccuped mid-honey tamale. Booed if someone bailed early. You see, the point was public pressure. The meal became a mirror. Who were you really when your stomach met the sun god's stopwatch?
It's oddly similar now. A guy on a YouTube challenge video fails the pizza wall of death in 12 minutes. The comments section lights up. Weak. Noob. My grandma could eat faster. And just like that, the ritual becomes moral theater. But here's the kicker. Most of these modern challenges offer no real reward. Maybe a t-shirt, a blurry photo on the restaurant wall, sometimes just applause. But people still show up, still sweat and suffer, all for that brief moment of time transcendence.
Why? Maybe because there's something reassuring about limits, about knowing that if you can just hold on, just chew a little faster, you'll reach the bell, the applause, the survival. The Aztecs knew that. We've just repackaged it with neon signage and ranch dressing. So the next time you watch someone panic over the last seconds of a pancake pyramid, remember, this isn't just fun. It's ritual. It's pressure. And it's a strange echo of a temple drumbeat from 1,000 years ago, still calling us to the table.
TikTok. There's something oddly comforting about overdoing it, isn't there? You know it's going to hurt. You know you'll regret it. But there's a strange peace in pushing past the warning signs. One more bite. One more spoonful. And maybe then you'll finally feel full. Or at least forget everything else for a moment. That's not just a modern feeling. You're seated now in an open-air stone courtyard, flickering with torchlight. It's a sacred Aztec feast night, and you've been honored with a place at the long, steaming table. Around you, priests, nobles, dancers resting in sweat-slick feathers. The air smells like maize, charcoal, and fermented chocolate. A server places another bowl in front of you. It's thick, dark, aromatic. You already had 4, maybe 5 courses. Your stomach protests. But you reach for the wooden spoon anyway, because tonight's feast isn't about hunger. It's about completion.
Overconsumption in Aztec culture wasn't just tolerated. It was celebrated on specific occasions, particularly during festivals like Tlacaxapehuilistli. Go ahead, try to pronounce it with a mouthful of tamale. Gorging yourself wasn't just indulgence. It was obedience to cosmic balance. To stop eating before the final dish was an insult to the divine rhythm of the event.
Historians still debate whether this ritual overeating was widespread or confined to elite castes. Some suggest that ceremonial gluttony helped mirror the gods' own legendary appetites, especially those deities associated with abundance, rain, or fertility. Others argue it was a public reminder of scarcity, that the ability to eat too much just once a year was a sacred privilege most wouldn't see again until next harvest. Either way, the result was the same. You ate until it felt like your body might split open. And then you kept going. Because ritual demanded it. Sound familiar?
Today we see this echo in binge culture. all-you-can-eat buffets, Thanksgiving dinner, streaming marathons, and of course, competitive eating shows. You don't stop when you're full. You stop when it's done. Look at the faces in any food challenge video around the 10-minute mark. There's a transformation. Joy shifts to focus, then to numbness, and finally to a kind of still, stoic trance. The same kind ancient priests probably watched descend across ceremonial banquets.
In fact, modern eaters have a name for this moment: the wall. It's the point where taste disappears and only willpower remains. Your body begs for mercy. Your brain says, just one more bite, you're almost free.
And here's the weird part. Pushing through that wall can feel spiritual.
You'll hear top eaters describe it that way. Like meditation, like fasting, but in reverse. It's not about the food anymore. It's about transformation. Ancient Aztec rituals sometimes included feasts so overwhelming that participants hallucinated. Not from mushrooms, just from the physical effects of eating to the point of delirium under sacred pressure. Quirky fact. Some accounts mention a dish called tlacatlaoli, a spiced corn mix served in enormous communal bowls, that was so heavy and fermented that participants often blacked out mid-dance after consuming it, and no one judged them. In fact, reaching the edge was the point. That loss of control, it was symbolic, a shedding of ego, a tribute to the gods. Weirdly, we still glorify that today. The guy who wins the pie eating contest by passing out face first into dessert? Hero. The woman who eats 150 oysters in one sitting and has to be carried out of the restaurant? Legend. There's a cultural permission slip hidden in the spectacle of gluttony. Go big, then go fetal.
And while the mediums have changed, no more sacrificial altars, just folding chairs and nacho trays, the feeling of ritual overconsumption hasn't.
We crave it.
Because in a world of control, restraint, and calorie counts, there's something liberating about just letting go. About crossing the line where logic ends and instinct, hunger, and heat take over. The Aztecs didn't just tolerate that. They institutionalized it. Some scholars even think that these massive overfeeding events weren't about excess at all, but about emptiness. A way to momentarily fill the endless spiritual hunger inside. After all, when the gods keep asking for hearts and blood, maybe stuffing your face feels like a safer offering. And let's be honest, haven't you, at least once, eaten your way through a rough week? Or a celebration? Or a breakup? Or boredom?
In that sense, you're not so different from the Stone Temple banquet guest shoveling down another maize cake under starlight. You're just using different tools. Plastic forks instead of carved obsidian. YouTube challenges instead of divine calendars. But the urge is the same, to eat past reason, to find yourself somewhere between discomfort and transcendence.
To remember, however briefly, what it feels like to be completely full.
Even if you regret it tomorrow.
And now, let's turn down the volume just a bit. Not the content, mind you, but the atmosphere. Because every great feast, ancient or modern, needs a proper announcer. A voice, a narrator. Someone who doesn't just describe the meal. They elevate it, wrap it in drama, suspense, ceremony. Someone to tell the crowd, what you're about to witness is no ordinary consumption. In the Aztec world, that someone was often a priest.
You don't see him at first. Just hear him. His voice rises above the flute music, above the rhythmic beat of the huhuetl drum, slicing through the smoke with sacred authority. He's standing on a stone dais near the temple steps, arms lifted, feathers trailing like fire. He's not announcing tonight's menu. He's announcing destiny. He's calling down the gods.
As the crowd hushes, he names the ritual, blesses the food, speaks of cycles, life, death, renewal. And yes, he even hints at what's been baked into that meat pie. You listen because you must. His words aren't optional. They are, quite literally, the soundtrack of survival.
Compare that to today's competitive eating hosts. Guys in striped blazers holding microphones with foam windshields shaped like pickles. Their job isn't sacred, but it is ceremonial. They hype the audience. They set the stage. They build the myth. Because let's be honest, watching someone eat 70 hot dogs in 10 minutes isn't that interesting on its own. It's the storytelling that sells it. Will he break the record? Can she defeat the reigning champ? Will anyone vomit before the final bell?
It's not just food, it's spectacle. And spectacle needs a voice.
Historians still debate the exact role of Aztec priests during public ceremonies. Were they narrators or orchestrators? Did they simply bless the food? Or did they also play director, signaling dancers, drummers, servers, and sacrificial assistants like stage managers of a cosmic play?
What we do know is that their presence was vital. Without the voice, the feast lost shape, meaning, momentum. Much like how modern contests fall flat without the hype man stirring the crowd with lines like, "Ladies and gentlemen, do not try this at home."
It's performance layered onto performance. And you, sitting in either arena, stone courtyard or boardwalk fair, find yourself swept up in it. The cadence, the charisma, the rising tempo that tells you something big is about to happen. Quirky fact. The Nathan's hot dog eating contest on Coney Island actually has a bunnet, a formal announcer with a top hat and a poetic script. He recites mythic biographies of the contestants. One guy was called the Locust of Lake Erie. Another was introduced as a human furnace fueled by nitrates and nerve.
It's absurd. And completely in line with the ancient tradition. Because this isn't just about food. It's about narrative. The story behind the swallowing. The tale that frames the trial. That's what keeps us watching. That's what makes the eater into a hero, a fool, or a martyr. Imagine the priest again. His voice echoes through the courtyard as the feast begins. He tells of past years, of great eaters who honored the gods with their bravery and iron stomachs. He warns of imbalance, of divine anger if the ritual isn't completed. He makes it clear your chewing has cosmic consequences, and you believe him, because belief is part of the meal. So is pressure.
With the crowd watching, the drum beating, the announcer shouting, there's no time to pause. You must keep going, no matter how full, no matter how dizzy. Because now, it's not just about eating. It's about being watched eating.
It's theater, and you're center stage.
That's why both ancient priests and modern hype men push the same buttons. Suspense, exaggeration, reverence. They're not lying. They're just framing. Giving you a reason to care. Helping you suspend disbelief as someone swallows things you'd never dare put near your face.
And you eat it up. Pun fully intended. Because deep down, we love a show. We love transformation. We love watching someone ordinary become a symbol of excess, of strength, of glorious regret. And none of that works without the voice guiding us through it.
Whether he's covered in feathers or foam, speaking in Nahuatl or English, standing beneath a temple or on a folding stage by a beach, the announcer is key. He's the bridge between the absurd and the sacred. He's the priest of performance.
And without him, it's just people eating in silence.
Which, let's face it, would make for a very awkward YouTube thumbnail. You step into the preparation chamber now. Not some sweat-slicked modern gym, but an Aztec room wreathed in smoke and chants, where your body becomes the altar before the feast even begins. And strangely, that vibe isn't so far off from what today's competitive eaters call training day. Because this takes practice. You don't just walk into a feast and start swallowing sacrificial stew like a hero. Whether you're about to devour a platter of tamales or 60 hot dogs in under 10 minutes, your body has to be ready to perform something almost superhuman. Something sacred in its excess. In the Aztec world, Some feasts involve designated participants, young men selected by priests, honored guests, warriors with reputations to defend. They were prepared like ritual objects, fasted, purified, sometimes even fattened. Their digestion was part of the spectacle. Your body wasn't just a vessel for food, it was the ceremony. Modern competitive eaters, same thing, different set of rituals. You've probably heard the horror stories. The gallon of water stretches, the 12-pound lettuce binges, the carefully timed training feasts where stomachs are coaxed wider, like competitive balloons. It's not about taste. It's about volume capacity. How far the human body can go before it breaks, bends, or bursts. Historians still argue whether Aztec feast participants trained for excess intentionally, or whether it was more symbolic, more ceremonial. But one thing's clear. Eating in front of others, for the sake of a larger story, divine or not, demands more than hunger.
It demands discipline.
Take Takeru Kobayashi, the man who revolutionized competitive eating. He broke world records with technique, not just appetite, splitting hot dogs in half, soaking buns in water, bobbing with rhythmic breath control. He studied the act of consumption like a martial art. The Aztecs had rituals of tecutli, nobles who trained for symbolic roles and sacrifices, including feasting events. Some of them, historians note, took herbs to suppress vomiting. Others practiced chants or dances to prepare their bodies for sacred consumption. Not so different from today's pre-contest rituals. Caffeine shots, Lucky Charms, even custom playlists to pump up the digestive trance. And there's this weird shared honesty to it all. Whether you're a feathered noble about to eat sacred maize cakes in front of thousands, or a dude in a tank top about to deep-throat 80 mozzarella sticks, you know what you signed up for. You've trained your stomach to forget fullness. You've taught your gag reflex to take a vacation. You've convinced your brain that chewing is optional and breathing is negotiable.
Because this is not just eating, it's performance digestion.
Quirky fact for you. Some modern eaters practice vomiting control. Not just avoiding it, managing it. As in, how to expel food without damaging their throat lining or their chances in the next round. It's called strategic reversal in certain underground circles. Ancient Aztecs didn't exactly leave instructional scrolls, but some rituals did involve symbolic purging afterward. A reset for the next spiritual cycle. You wonder if the priest ever pulled someone aside and whispered, "Just make it to the end, okay? Then we'll call the herbalists."
Because behind the performance, there's pain.
Every trained eater, past or present, knows that success is brief and discomfort is eternal. Whether your stomach's bulging beneath jade beads or a branded t-shirt, the aftermath is a shared human experience. Cramping, dizziness, the desperate crawl toward horizontal rest. And yet, they do it again. Every year, every festival, every July 4th or Day of the Sun. Why? Because they were chosen. Or at least volunteered with great enthusiasm.
Training turns suffering into spectacle. And once you've trained, really trained, you're not just part of the feast. You are the feast. Not in the edible sense, hopefully, but in the spiritual one.
You've made your body into a tribute.
And whether the gods watching are named Huitzilopochtli or ESPN, you know they demand endurance.
So you stretch, hydrate, meditate. You study the ancient scrolls or the highlight reels. You condition your gut and cleanse your mind. And you prepare, not just to eat, but to be witnessed eating.
Because that's the point of training. Not just survival, but transformation.
You become the eater who cannot be stopped. The one whose name is sung long after the plates are cleared.
The one who turned appetite into art.
You're not quite sure when it starts to go wrong. Maybe it's the third platter, or the moment the crowd starts chanting faster. But the feast begins to blur. The line between indulgence and danger thins, then vanishes. The food doesn't sit in your belly anymore. It presses, expands, pushes back. The food is fighting you now.
And you remember, this was always part of it.
In both ancient Aztec rituals and modern eating contests, the pleasure of consumption is never the whole story. The dark twin of feasting is suffering. It's the moment the hero stumbles, the priest trembles, the crowd holds its breath. It's spectacle, but it's also caution. Every overstuffed moment whispers the same message. You're not supposed to get away with this. Back in the Aztec Empire, there was a festival called Tlaquexipehualixtli. Translation? The flaying of men. Sounds delightful, right? It included gladiator-style battles, but also feasting, both sacred and disturbing. Food served alongside displays of human sacrifice. Dancers mimicking bloodletting, in ceremonies honoring Zyptotec, the god of rebirth through pain. Historians still argue whether the ritual meals that followed were moments of triumph or acts of shared mourning.
That paradox? It's everywhere in competitive eating, too. You've seen the montage clips. Contestants curled over trash cans, drenched in sweat, faces gray with strain. The MCs shout, the music blares, but the body says, no more. And sometimes, it means it.
There have been hospitalizations, oxygen tanks off camera, in rare cases, even death. One amateur eater in a California taco challenge choked to death mid-bite. No glory, no fanfare, just silence. Still, the contests go on.
Because pain in this arena is part of the point. It's not just about what you can eat. It's about how far you're willing to push the boundary between delight and destruction. A kind of ritual brinksmanship. You test the gods, whether they wear jaguar masks or red, white, and blue tank tops.
Quirky aside, ancient Mesoamerican warriors sometimes drank a fermented beverage made from maize and honey before ritual meals, supposedly to dull pain and soften the passage to the gods. Today's eaters? Some down Pepto and pickle juice like potions, preparing for the gastrointestinal war ahead. Different drinks, same prayer. Let me survive what I'm about to do.
And then there's the purge.
Modern contests sometimes end with quiet disappearances. Contestants slipping off stage to heave, recover, cry. It's unofficial, but understood. Aztec ceremonies were less subtle. Certain feasts involve ritual vomiting, not just from overconsumption, but as a purifying act. You gave the gods what they demanded, then gave the earth the rest. It's hard not to see the echo in modern culture's obsession with the purge moment. Reality TV zooming in on faces mid-gag, social media clips of failed eaters collapsing in defeat. Pain becomes entertainment. We laugh, we wince, we press replay. Historians debate whether ancient feasts used pain to elevate or to warn. Was it a test of spiritual resilience? Or just a brutal reminder of mortality? Today, we seem equally unsure. You watch a man cram 50 eggs into his mouth and can't decide whether he's brave or broken. You click anyway.
But here's the strange twist. The audience loves the pain. They need it. Because the suffering makes the spectacle feel real. Without it, you doubt the stakes. The gasps, the sweat, the stomach contortions. These are the marks of sincerity.
Nobody fakes that kind of discomfort.
So, in a way, the eater becomes a kind of martyr, willingly enduring pain so the crowd can feel alive. Just like the Aztec warrior priests who bled on cue, or the feast participants who danced with distended bellies, then collapsed in the sun.
You signed up for this, remember? You trained. You showed up. And now the food has turned from offering to adversary. It tests you with every chew, every swallow. And still, you keep going.
Because pain isn't the end of the feast. It's the part that makes it sacred. You sit there, bloated, breathless, teetering on the edge of reason, and still the crowd roars. Their voices wrap around you like heat, urging you forward, daring you to break. You're not the only one who's eaten too much tonight. You're just the one who did it on stage. But here's the twist nobody talks about. The spectacle isn't just for entertainment. It's a mirror. In ancient Aztec society, the feast was never just a party. It was a test, a performance, and more often than not, a warning dressed in splendor. The gods were always watching, and they judged through symbols. How much could a body take? How much could a person give up publicly before crossing into sacrifice?
You feel that same tension in today's competitive eating world. Take the Nathan's hot dog eating contest, one of the most well-known modern food challenges. Every 4th of July, thousands gather on Coney Island. Not for fireworks, not for history, for gorging. And it's not subtle. Contestants hoist trophies shaped like mustard bottles. Commentators use words like legend and glory. There's choreography, commentary, and a time clock.
But something lingers beneath the pop music and inflatable sausages. This is ritual, not random.
You stand before the crowd like a priest before the altar.
And like the Aztecs before you, you know the altar bites back. There's a reason scholars have pointed out parallels between ancient feast sacrifices and modern-day sports spectacles. Some even refer to them as civil rituals of acceptable violence. And sure, that might sound dramatic, until you notice how often the participants collapse, vomit, or stagger away trembling. The pain isn't incidental. It's the cost of admission. In Aztec times, the feast's pain held deeper meaning. To suffer in public was to affirm a cosmic order. You surrendered to the gods, giving back the energy that kept the sun alive. Every groan, every convulsion was a sacred currency. Even the most elaborate banquets were staged not to glorify humans, but to entertain divinity.
Historians still debate whether the feast participants were honored guests or doomed pawns. One theory suggests that dancers and eaters were volunteer sacrifices, exalted for their roles, but expected to perish by the ritual's end. Others argue they lived, barely, but were forever changed, marked by what they endured.
Doesn't that sound familiar?
Many top-tier competitive eaters today suffer long-term damage. Stretched stomachs, weakened gag reflexes, digestive systems push beyond normal function. They walk away with trophies and sponsorships, sure, but some never truly recover. And yet, they return.
Why? Because public feasting, whether ancient or modern, gives something ordinary people secretly crave: transcendence. You, the performer, get to defy natural limits. You become larger than life. For 10 minutes or 10 hours, you are not just a person. You're a vessel for something greater. Just like those costumed dancers in Aztec temples, masked and adorned, stepping into the firelight to embody the gods. Their movements weren't random. They followed choreographies passed down through generations, meant to invoke balance between realms. The eating contests today follow their own sacred steps. The countdown, the dunking of buns, the ritual handshake, the chants from the crowd. And every ritual has its shadows. Aztec ceremonies didn't end with dessert. Some feasts concluded with human hearts placed in bowls, a final offering, a full circle gesture. Modern equivalents? We offer hospital visits, swollen organs, lonely Uber rides home in silence. And then replays.
Because what good is ritual without witnesses? In both worlds, the feast's memory outlasts the food. Stone carvings depicted ancient feasts in loving, gruesome detail, arms raised, faces mid-ecstasy or agony. Today, we do the same with slow-mo recaps, TikToks, and thumbnails that freeze contestants mid-bite, sauce dripping like war paint. Quirky fact: one Aztec codex shows a man holding a plate in one hand and a severed leg in the other, grinning. Scholars can't decide if it was literal, symbolic, or just bad humor from a bored scribe. Either way, you feel the echo in today's thumbnails. Absurd, grotesque, oddly joyful.
So as you sit there, chest heaving, sweat sliding down your back, You realize you're not just a glutton in a game. You're part of a lineage.
A human compulsion dressed in new clothes.
To consume, to suffer, to be seen, to make the unbearable almost beautiful. Your breath slows as the crowd disperses, but the performance lingers.
You feel it in your jaw, still sore from chewing. In your stomach, which churns like a boiling pot left too long on the fire. And you feel it most in the silence that follows. Hollow. Electric. The same silence that once wrapped around ancient feasting halls after the last body fell. The aftermath is part of the ritual, too. Aztec feasts didn't end when the drums stopped. They bled into aftermath, cleanups, processions, and strange sacred quiet. The ground, once pulsing with music, would now carry blood, bones, or petals. And yet, people didn't rush away. They stayed, some to mourn, some to bask, some simply to breathe it all in. You're doing the same now, surrounded by wrappers, paper trays, and the smell of mustard. Your modern setting has vending machines and medics instead of temples and priestesses. But look closer. The choreography is still intact. Competitive eating events, like their ancient counterparts, demand more than stomach space. They require theater, outfits, mascots, marching bands, fans holding handmade signs, streamers, confetti, chants, and somewhere in the back, always, the threat of collapse. Physical, emotional, even spiritual.
And here's the uncanny part. The celebration of too much.
Aztec feasts were known for indulgence beyond necessity. Piles of tamales, roasted frogs, steaming maize, and the occasional human limb. Yes, still debated. Everyone took part, not just the elite. These weren't private affairs. They were community spectacles, designed to overwhelm the senses. Historians still argue whether this overindulgence was meant to honor the gods or distract the people. Some texts suggest that the feasts occurred right before mass sacrifices, perhaps to dull the crowd's resistance with food and drink. Others argue that the gluttony was the sacrifice, a way of giving back in fullness, not fear. Modern food contests mirror this logic. You don't just eat. You overwhelm. You destroy limits. You make people gasp, cringe, cheer. That burrito? It weighs more than a newborn. Those wings? Drenched in sauce hotter than lava. The point isn't the flavor. It's the feat.
The more absurd, the better.
There's a quirky little fact about one modern record holder who ate over 60 slices of pizza in 10 minutes, then calmly gave an interview while sipping a Diet Coke. It sounds almost mythological, doesn't it? Like something an ancient bard would sing over firelight.
And then there's the price. Aztec feasts often required days of preparation and weeks of recovery. People fasted beforehand, sometimes for religious purity, sometimes because they couldn't afford to eat until the grand event. Afterwards, many fell ill. Some blamed the gods. Some blamed themselves. Either way, there was always a cost. There was...
You feel it too, don't you?
That ache in your gut. The regret behind your ribs. But more than that, the strange meaning pulsing through it. You did something excessive, and now your body is trying to catch up. In a way, you've sacrificed something. Comfort, control, dignity maybe, and for what? To be seen. It's not just you. We all watch these feasts and contests not just for shock, but for contact. We crave connection to the raw, the real, the over-the-top. Maybe because our daily lives are so measured, so portioned. A food competition throws that aside. It says, here is too much. Let it spill.
Aztec society understood this. The idea that emotion and power lived in excess. They believed in tonali, a vital energy stored in the head and heart. Too much emotion, too much movement, even too much food could cause this energy to erupt or escape. That wasn't always bad. Sometimes losing your tonali meant becoming something more. You wonder now, did you lose something today? Or did you gain something ancient?
Maybe the appeal of these modern eating shows isn't just entertainment. Maybe they scratch something deeper. A longing for communion, a taste of chaos, a flash of identity through absurdity. Or maybe, just maybe, they awaken something buried in ancestral memory. The echoes of old temples, full moons, and tables that shook under impossible weight.
Because in both worlds, the food isn't the end. It's the invitation. The real ritual begins with the aftermath. You're still chewing the silence when the crowd shifts, breaking the spell.
They start to move again, slowly at first, then with renewed chatter. Someone's laughing too loudly near the porta potties. A kid waves a ketchup-streaked flag. And beside you, a man in a mustard-stained tank top is being interviewed by a phone-wielding teen who's trying very hard to sound like a real reporter. You're witnessing something ancient. The transformation of the eater into the champion.
It's never just about the food. It's about the story you wear afterward. Aztec feasts weren't anonymous gluttony either. Certain individuals were lifted up, praised, celebrated, even mythologized. Think of the warriors who brought back prisoners for sacrifice. They were decorated in feathers, given drinks, and led through town like victorious athletes. And no surprise, some of them also got the first bite of the post-sacrifice banquet.
You could say those were the earliest food influencers.
Today's eating contest winners are rarely remembered for their faces. They're remembered for their feats. The ones who devoured 50 eggs in under 2 minutes, or consumed an entire octopus while blindfolded. It's a curious fame. Fleeting, visceral, sticky. But there's honor in it. They made themselves known through hunger and victory. Like ancient champions, they stepped forward and became the moment.
But for every hero, there must be someone shamed.
You remember that contestant who dropped out after the second round. Maybe they gagged. Maybe they puked. Maybe they just whispered, "I can't." That person now walks through the crowd with eyes a little lower. And the others, they notice. They glance. They whisper. Aztecs knew this too.
Feasts weren't just celebration. They were hierarchy in motion. Everyone could attend. But not everyone emerged equal. The drunkard who passed out early might find himself mocked for days. The man who failed to dance in rhythm could be ridiculed. And the one who refused the ceremonial dish, that could be seen as sacrilege.
Historians still argue whether these social shames were enforced through policy or through culture. Some claim records of formal punishments for failing ritual behavior, while others suggest it was more organic, an evolving system of gossip, humor, and performance.
Sound familiar?
Today's contestants often become memes before they become memories. A face twisted in mustardy regret, a mid-bite freeze frame, a viral clip titled, "When You Realize the Burger Was a Mistake." And while we laugh, the truth is a little darker. We still use shame and glory as fuel. There's something uncomfortably satisfying in watching someone else fail spectacularly.
But there's beauty too, in watching someone shine under pressure.
Aztecs believed in Ixiptla, a sort of temporary embodiment of the gods. In certain festivals, someone might be chosen to act as a god's avatar, treated like royalty for a time, only to be sacrificed at the end. The honor wasn't in surviving. It was in being chosen, in becoming more than mortal for a brief, glorious flicker.
Now look back at your hot dog champion, sweat glistening, lips swollen, hands trembling, but smiling. Because right now, they are the god of appetite, the lord of the stomach. The crowd claps and cameras flash. That person, bloated and stained, holds the plastic trophy like it's made of obsidian.
You see it now. It's not about food, it's about story.
And story needs stakes. That's why these events thrive on spectacle, pacing, and identity. That's why someone paints a flag on their cheek or wears a hot dog costume just to cheer louder. The same way Aztec dancers would don jaguar skins or hummingbird feathers to transform themselves for the feast. Costumes weren't just decoration, they were permission to become. Even you in your wrinkled shirt and lemonade-stained jeans, you feel like you've crossed into something else. A world where food is no longer nourishment, but currency. A place where you measure your worth not by restraint, but by embrace of chaos, of excess, of unfiltered hunger.
That's not so different from Tenochtitlan on Festival Day. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some Aztec nobles were said to have competed in quiet feasting duels, who could finish the richest dishes without breaking expression. A silent contest of class and guts. Loser might vomit. Winner walked away a little more legendary. Compare that to the modern twist. Eating contests for charity. The winner gets applause, a check is written, everyone posts the results, and the community glows with pride. Its performance meets purpose. Competition wrapped in a cause.
You wonder, is shame a price worth paying for connection? Is glory still glory when it leaves you curled up in a bathroom stall? These are the questions ancient people asked too, though they asked them in songs, in dances, in ceremonial pauses between bites. They didn't always get answers. Neither do you.
But maybe that's the point.
Because whether you're standing in the dust of Tenochtitlan or under a pop-up canopy in rural Ohio, there's always someone watching, judging, cheering, laughing, and someone else, nervous, trembling, breath held, about to step forward. Maybe it's you next time.
The sky begins to dim now, not from sunset, but from cloud cover, heavy and slow like something watching. It casts the whole fairground in a soft gloom, the kind that turns fried food glistening and sweat streaks into ink. The crowd thins slightly. People peel off to buy cotton candy or find a trash can for their half-eaten corn dogs. You're still standing there, in front of the now empty contest table, trying to process what just happened. Not just the hot dog eating spectacle, but everything behind it. The pageantry, the ritual, the eerie sense that this wasn't new. It was ancient. It always was.
And now your mind drifts, slowly but irresistibly, toward what happens after the feast. For the Aztecs, the meal wasn't the ending. It was a transformation. After great ritual banquets, especially those involving sacrifice, came the cleansing. The quiet. The strange aftermath where bodies felt heavy, minds wandered, and dreams arrived early. The same people who cheered the loudest would often be the first to retreat into shadow, reeling from overconsumption, wine, or something deeper. Just like now, you catch a group of teenagers slumped on the grass nearby, groaning dramatically. Someone mutters, "I feel like I swallowed a bowling ball," and everyone laughs. But the truth is, they kinda did. Not literally, of course, but symbolically. They swallowed excess. They ingested a moment, and now, their bodies don't quite know what to do with it.
Aztec priests often spoke of the shadow stomach, not the organ, but the spiritual aftermath of feasting. The belief was that food didn't just nourish the body, it burdened the soul. You had to process what you consumed on every level, or it would rot in your dreams. That's why cleansing rituals were common. Steam baths, vomiting herbs, long walks alone in the hills.
Historians still debate whether these rituals were meant purely for health, or if they reflected something deeper. An awareness of emotional processing. A need to purge not just meat and mead, but meaning.
Sound familiar? In modern terms, we call it the food hangover. You know the symptoms. Bloated belly, vague guilt, mild regret, and the vague whisper of, why did I do that to myself? But it's not just biological. It's philosophical. Eating that much, watching that much consumption, changes something in you. It forces a reckoning. You look down at your own snack, a pretzel, untouched. Somehow it now feels obscene. As if the bread twisted in your hand is no longer food but a symbol. And you're You're caught in the ritual hangover, the same one people have felt since long before tablecloths and condiments. That hollow ache that says you've had too much. And yet, not enough. The Aztecs would address this imbalance through storytelling. After a major feast, families gathered to recount dreams, offer interpretations, and give thanks. It wasn't just small talk. It was a way to stitch meaning back into the body, to take the scattered pieces of ceremony and digest them fully, here, in this carnival setting. Your version of storytelling is a little different. It's a selfie, a sarcastic TikTok, a text message that says, "Bro, I just watched a guy eat 37 hot dogs in 5 minutes, and now I don't believe in God." Close enough. But somewhere in your gut, you know it's more than that. What you saw was ritual theater. As absurd as it looked, it was a window into something elemental.
Remember the powdered skull remedy? Back in section 6? That was just another version of transformation. The belief that eating a piece of someone could absorb their power, their essence. Maybe watching someone eat so much is a reverse version. You give a piece of yourself to their performance. Your shock, your laughter, your gaze.
They carry that now. That's the true magic of feasting. It reassigns power. The eater doesn't just consume food, they consume the attention, the energy. And afterward, everyone's just a little different. Rearranged. Here's a fringe tidbit you might enjoy. In some regions of Mesoamerica, post-feast silence was enforced. Not by threat, but by custom. For an hour or more, people would sit quietly together, eyes lowered, sometimes humming, sometimes just breathing. It was called the cooling of the fire. The belief was that after flame, after passion, came the settling, a sacred lull.
Now think about that awkward silence after a modern eating contest. The trash being collected, the squeaky speaker still playing Eye of the Tiger, the volunteers awkwardly scraping leftover chili off a folding table. It's the same cooling of the fire, minus the poetry.
We laugh at eating contests. We call them gross or ridiculous. But deep down, we understand why they exist. We're still wired for ritual, for collective performance, for pushing the limits of our bodies in front of others. The only thing that's changed is the costume. No more jaguar skins, just ketchup-stained tank tops. You step away now.
The carnival noises shift again. Sugar-slicked screams from the rides, someone winning a stuffed bear. But your steps feel heavier, as if you're walking through fog. Your body hasn't even eaten that much, but your mind feels full, saturated. You've just witnessed a modern rite, a public hunger, a collective trance.
Something in you is still digesting it.
You wander now, drifting through the slow-moving current of fairground bodies, the lights around you blooming like stars trapped in candy wrappers. But your thoughts keep circling back, to the Aztecs, to the eaters, to the idea that performance and consumption were always twins, maybe even lovers. You can't unsee it now. The weird echo between sacred feasts of ancient temples and greasy fried indulgence on a hot summer night. And just when you think you've escaped the gravity of it all, you find yourself in front of something new. A stage. Not just any stage. This one is smaller, makeshift, with a banner flapping in the breeze that reads, "Extreme Food Dares. Think you can handle it." There's a spinning wheel with phrases like ghost pepper shot, pickle sludge smoothie, bugs a la mode, and, because the universe clearly has a sense of humor, mole sauce mystery cup. It's all spectacle, of course. A dare show hybrid that preys on adrenaline junkies and bored teens. But you know what it really is?
It's trial by fire. And not just any fire. The fire of ego.
The Aztecs had their own version. Not just the great ritual feast with hundreds of guests, but small, intense competitions. Tests of endurance and bravery. Young nobles might be challenged to eat strange, symbolic foods. Fermented maize with hallucinogenic fungus, Bitter cocoa that numbed the tongue, dishes spiced to the edge of pain. They weren't just about food. They were spiritual qualifiers, markers of who could handle transformation.
Historians still argue whether these early eating rituals were purely for rites of passage or a more literal way to invoke altered states of consciousness. Some think it was a test. Others believe it was an opening, an edible key to the divine. Fast forward to now. No one on this fairground stage is praying to the rain god, but you can see it in their eyes. The same tension, the same nervous grin, the same need to prove something. One guy steps up and spins the wheel. It lands on scorpion nachos. The crowd cheers. His hand shakes slightly as he picks one up. The scorpion is deep-fried, antennae curled like burnt string. He swallows. Everyone roars. He grins and high-fives his friend, who looks half terrified and half inspired.
But here's the thing. No one's really watching the food. They're watching him. And that's the heart of it. The food is just the medium. The real feast is emotional theater. You eat fear. You swallow risk. You devour the chance to be seen.
Back in the days of the Mexica Empire, warrior feasts included these very ideas. A young soldier might be brought before the fire and asked to consume a symbolic item. Jaguar meat, maybe, or a stew mixed with obsidian ash. To eat was to accept fate, and those who didn't finish were often mocked, or pitied, or occasionally punished. Modern punishments? Mostly shame and TikTok comments, but the cultural DNA is still there. You watch as another contestant takes the stage, this one younger, maybe 17. The wheel gives her pickle sludge smoothie, and the crowd groans. She laughs nervously, then drinks. All of it. No flinch. And you can see her face change, not just from the taste, but from the transformation. She's done something outrageous. She's crossed a threshold, and people saw her do it. Welcome to initiation by digestion.
You notice, too, that the contestants come from all walks of life. A mom in a PTA sweatshirt, a guy in a business suit, a girl still wearing her track uniform from school. The stage doesn't care who you are. It only cares what you can stomach.
Aztec feasts worked the same way. The table wasn't just where you ate. It was where you were measured. Could you keep up? Could you handle the intensity? Could you embrace the absurdity of sacred performance disguised as consumption? There's even a little-known myth from Nahua lore about a man who wanted to join the priesthood. To do so, he had to consume an entire bowl of xocolotl, a bitter, heavily spiced cocoa drink, while standing on one foot, eyes closed, and reciting the names of gods without stumbling. If he failed, he had to repeat it every day for a year. Most gave up.
But those who didn't, it became something else. Now no one here is reciting God's names, but the rhythm of the Dare show mimics those ancient initiations. You step up, you take the thing, you hold your breath, and then you swallow. Not just food, but your doubt.
It's a kind of bravery that doesn't get medals, but maybe it should. Here's your quirky fringe tidbit for the night. In a few rural villages in southern Mexico, there's still a ritual where people eat the 7 tongues, a symbolic dish made from 7 different animal tongues, each one meant to grant a type of wisdom. Cow for honesty, goat for cleverness, parrot for speech. The last is always frog, said to give insight into dreams. It's served once a year at dusk, no phones allowed.
You think about that now, watching a man down a glass of hot mustard lemonade, coughing with tears in his eyes, but smiling like he just earned a badge.
The night's getting stranger. The food dares are winding down. Someone in the crowd jokes about starting an Aztec mukbang channel, and everyone laughs. But there's a weird echo behind the joke. You feel it again. That thread between past and present. Temples and tents. Sacrifice and selfies.
Because every culture finds a way to watch each other eat. Whether it's to survive, celebrate, prove, or punish, we've always turned meals into mirrors. And right now, yours is showing something strange.
You're still hungry, but it's not for food.
The air shifts as you leave the makeshift dare stage behind. The crowd is dispersing, but a few stragglers linger, laughing, wiping sauce off their shirts, exchanging inside jokes they earn through shared suffering. You glance back once more, just in time to see a teenage girl proudly holding up a t-shirt that reads, "I survived the pickle sludge smoothie." Of course she did. That's the new badge of honor. But what if the Aztecs had merch tables? You smirk at the idea. High priest hawking, "I drank blood chocolate and all I got was this loincloth towels outside a pyramid." It's ridiculous. And yet,
Would it really be that different?
because what you've learned tonight is that eating in public has always been a performance. And not just performance for performance's sake, but a kind of moral theater too. A mirror of values, status, even power.
Which is where things get really interesting. Because now, you enter a quieter part of the fair. Less neon, more shadows. You find yourself near a row of tents you didn't notice before. There's one in particular. Black canvas, lined with red velvet ropes and old-timey lettering that reads, "Historical Curiosities, Forbidden Feasts and Ritual Recipes." Of course you step inside.
And immediately the air smells different. Earthier. Like dried herbs, charcoal, and a whiff of cinnamon. There's no barker, no music. Just glass cases filled with replicas. Some beautiful, some grotesque.
The first display, a model of an Aztec banquet, laid out in painstaking detail. Clay dishes filled with tamales, bowls of maize and squash, and a strange meat dish labeled simply as chilmole, with noble offering. You recognize the word chilmole, a type of early mole sauce, smoky and complex. But that phrase, noble offering, yeah, that's not turkey. Historians still argue whether these ritual stews ever actually contained human meat, or if the descriptions from early Spanish chroniclers were exaggerated to justify conquest. Some say it happened rarely, in strictly symbolic contexts. Others say the Spaniards projected their own fears onto the empire they didn't understand. Either way, the idea sticks in your teeth.
The next case shows early colonial records. Handwritten logs poorly translated, describing feasts where captured warriors were honored with consumption. The tone is clinical, detached. The kind of detachment you develop when you don't want to look something in the eye.
Then comes the oddest part.
A wall covered with modern food challenge posters. Copies of real advertisements from the last 50 years. Pizza the size of your mattress. Ice cream sundaes with 40 toppings. Burritos so large they need scaffolding. They're presented like artifacts.
You're staring at a lineup of human absurdity. One side offering the mystical consumption of symbolic body meals. The other pushing a 20,000-calorie cheeseburger challenge named the Annihilator.
And yet, in a twisted way, they rhyme.
Because both extremes revolve around transgression. Aztec feasts broke normal rules. They were sacred exceptions where the taboo became temporarily divine. Human flesh, for instance, wasn't just food. It was symbolic reciprocity. You consume the body of the sacrificed, not to indulge, but to complete a cycle. A gift given and received. Modern food challenges break different taboos. Overeating, spectacle, public mess. They're allowed because they're framed as stunts. But underneath it, there's something else.
A weird kind of devotion.
Think about it.
You wait in line to watch someone eat 15 pounds of barbecue ribs. You cheer. You gag. You post it online. The eater becomes larger than life. Literally and figuratively. It's grotesque, yes, but also impressive. Even oddly spiritual.
One quirky fact you read once in a fringe anthropology journal claimed that some early European missionaries were confused by Aztec eating ceremonies and mistook them for pagan versions of communion. The overlap was uncomfortable. Too close for comfort.
And maybe that discomfort still lingers. You drift deeper into the tent, and now the final display stops you in your tracks. A looping video montage titled Then and Now,
The theater of eating. It flips back and forth. A priest places sacred food into the mouth of a kneeling initiate. Cut to a man biting into a burger the size of his head while being cheered on by a crowd in plastic hats. A girl drinks a ceremonial cacao brew while surrounded by incense and silence. Cut to a guy chugging 4 milkshakes on a YouTube livestream as confetti falls and dubstep plays.
The transitions are jarring, but effective. You feel it now, not judgment, not revulsion, but recognition. Because whether it's for the gods or the algorithm, we still eat for an audience.
Still push limits. Still turn food into a test. The real difference? Maybe it's the aftermath.
The Aztecs ate to honor the cosmos, to mimic divine cycles, to participate in the great wheel of death and rebirth. They fasted before feasts. They prepared their bodies. They saw food as part of a sacred equation. Today, we mostly just see food as content, something to consume visually before we even taste it. We binge the video before we binge the meal. And then, we scroll.
And yet, there's a strange honesty in these modern spectacles. A rawness. The same hunger for awe, for meaning, for ritual. You step out of the tent. The night air feels heavier now, the kind that settles into your bones. You hear laughter again in the distance. But it's quieter. Like the end of a party, or the moment just before a final course.
And you realize something unsettling. No one ever talks about what happens after the feast. Not the Aztecs, not the daredevils, not the content creators. Because after the feast comes the silence, the emptiness, the reckoning. And maybe
that's the part we fear most.
You walk slowly now, as if your feet are heavier. As if the stories you've carried from inside that tent have settled into your souls. The fare is thinning out. Even the music has quieted. Just a faint bass thump in the distance. Like the pulse of a heartbeat remembered more than felt. And it's in this liminal space, between the frenzy of eating and the hush that follows, that you come to understand something deeper.
Because the real feast? It was never about the food. Not for the Aztecs, not for us. It's about who eats, when, and why. So now, let's talk about power.
You pass a half-lit photo booth and pause to glance inside. A couple is laughing, covered in hot wing sauce, trying to take a selfie. It's absurd. Beautiful even. But it reminds you of something older. Something harsher.
In Aztec society, the feasts weren't just rituals. They were a strict hierarchy on a plate.
Commoners ate corn, beans, and insects. Nobles feasted on turkey, venison, cacao. And only the highest-ranking priests and warriors could taste the sacred meat, whatever that may have meant. The table was a map of social rank, from the lowliest farmer to the emperor himself. Now think about competitive eating today.
Sure, anyone can enter, in theory. But have you ever noticed how almost every champion in the major league eating circuit ends up sponsored? Flown around the country? Used as a quirky marketing gimmick for fast food chains that would never hire them as executives. It's subtle, but the pattern holds. You perform hunger well enough, and someone richer profits. And in both systems, the ancient and the modern, the ones watching tend to have more power than the ones chewing.
Even in temples, the crowd watched the elite consume ritual dishes with awe. Food was theater, but also a flex.
One mainstream fact that always shocks people: Aztec emperors held mock feasts where enemies were dressed as deities, pampered for days, and then ceremonially sacrificed. It was a twisted honor. To be served the best, only to become the course. Remind you of anything? That YouTuber who invited random fans to his mansion for a filmed ultimate taco gauntlet, only to humiliate the losers with sour milk shots and cold bean slaps?
The truth is, modern food media still plays with ritual humiliation. You just don't see the knife anymore. Only the edits.
Now here's a fringe tidbit you won't hear in cooking school. There's a recurring theory among performance artists that eating on camera is one of the most vulnerable, intimate acts you can do. It opens the mouth, exposes the body, invites judgment. It turns something essential into something vulnerable. Then, if monetized, into something exploitative. Like an unspoken contract. We'll watch you eat if you agree to let us not care about your fullness. You reach the edge of the fair now, just past the corn dog stand that's long since shut down. And it hits you. What would the Aztecs say about this? Would they be appalled? Or would they recognize it? Historians still debate whether Aztec rulers truly believed in the gods they fed, or whether it was politics wrapped in feathers and bone. Was it sincere devotion, or just optics? Like a TikTok thumbnail in obsidian and jade?
The parallels are dizzying. Back then, feasts were curated, attended by invite, framed with storytelling, music, scent, ritual. In a way, every meal was produced content, just without the Wi-Fi. And now,
we live stream everything. You think of mukbangs, those Korean-originated eating shows where hosts consume massive amounts of food while chatting with viewers in real time. Originally a response to urban loneliness, it became a global phenomenon. But there's a dark twist. Some viewers fetishize it. Others watch out of concern. Some just want company. Many comment only to critique body size.
Again, performance, power, pleasure, punishment. The same four chords remixed endlessly. You sit now, finally, on a bench just beyond the fairgrounds. A discarded cup rolls by in the wind. The stars above you are faint, washed by light pollution, but still there. Constant. And in this silence, you remember one last fact. The Aztecs believed the world had ended 4 times before. Each age destroyed by wind, fire, jaguars, or floods. We live, they claimed, in the 5th sun. An age doomed to collapse unless fed by blood and sacrifice. Sounds dramatic, but look around.
A planet teetering on overconsumption. Species vanishing. Crops choking in droughts one year, floods the next. And still, we eat. Still, we gorge. Still, we watch others stuff their bodies for clicks, while half the world starves. We've replaced temples with screens, priests with influencers, rituals with trends. But the hunger?
That hasn't changed. You breathe in the night, long and slow. You imagine the laughter from earlier fading like incense. You imagine the tent, the cases, the looping footage all packed away.
You imagine the gods watching, if they're still there.
And if they are,
you hope they're hungry too. The ground beneath your feet feels cooler now. Night has settled in for good. Not just a passing shade, but a deep, velvety hush. The fair is behind you, just a memory clinging faintly to the air. Grease, sugar, something sweetly burnt. You walk slower. Not because you're tired, but because your thoughts are heavy now.
This isn't just about food anymore. It's about how we watch food. How we turn nourishment into spectacle. How we've built entire industries on the strange compulsion to witness hunger and fullness in others. Like it's a performance we no longer want to live ourselves.
So you turn your thoughts to screens.
To the scroll.
To the endless feed of food content. Cooked, eaten, rated, discarded, adored. And here's a moment of recognition. The ancient Aztecs had iconography carved in stone. Detailed pictograms of food rituals, offerings, divine banquets. Each glyph a frame. Each mural a curated post. You start to see the eerie similarity. Our food obsession didn't start with TikTok. We just changed the platform. Consider this. One mainstream fact that rarely gets airtime is how Aztec markets were incredibly complex, organized, massive. In Tlatelolco, the marketplace saw tens of thousands of people daily. There were food critics, literally, individuals assigned to report on who sold the best tamales, which vendor watered down their chili paste. Gossip, reviews, influencer culture, before Instagram even knew what a filter was.
Now zoom forward.
A cooking influencer today builds an empire from recipe hacks, kitchen aesthetics, and the occasional drama over stolen sauce ideas. We binge-watch someone caramelizing onions at 2 a.m., not because we're hungry, but because watching food feels safe, controlled, and comforting. And if it's someone else's mess, even better. The fringe tidbit you didn't ask for but need. In parts of Southeast Asia, some content creators actually stage fake food prep ASMR, cutting air instead of fruit, miming boiling water. Why? Because some viewers find the sound more satisfying than actual food. It's a show. Always has been.
And in a way, you get it. Because real hunger is vulnerable. Real cooking is messy. Real eating is not always beautiful.
But stylized food, that's digestible. Back to the Aztecs. Scholars still argue whether the elaborate feasts were truly spiritual, or whether it was all political theater designed to reinforce social hierarchies. Did the priests genuinely feel communion with the gods, or were they using divine cuisine as a way to keep the people in line?
Replace priests with brands and gods with algorithms. And suddenly you're not in Tenochtitlan anymore. You're in a modern test kitchen with 6 ring lights trying to hit 3.2 million views by Thursday.
You think of all the shows. Iron Chef, Hell's Kitchen, Nailed It, competition layered on top of consumption, time limits, pressure, tears, a perfectly plated panic attack.
And suddenly you remember that Aztec feast nights were sometimes choreographed to coincide with celestial alignments. Stars, eclipses, solstice markers. The idea was to cook in harmony with the cosmos. Today, we post according to analytics. Same impulse, different heavens.
And here comes the kicker. In both then and now, the food isn't the goal. It's the ritual of control.
Back then, it was appeasing gods. Now, it's appeasing viewers, or shareholders, or trends.
The more things change, you take a seat on a low concrete ledge near the parking lot. Streetlights flicker in the distance like modern torches. A wrapper skips by in the breeze, neon orange crumbs trailing behind. You can't help but imagine it's sacred somehow. Offerings into the spirits of sodium.
And as the wind picks up, you realize the core truth. Watching others eat scratches an itch, one that might be older than civilization. We like to know who gets fed and who doesn't. We like to know we're not alone in our cravings. And sometimes we just like to know someone out there is messier than us.
Even Aztec nobles were rumored to watch commoners eat on feast days, more as entertainment than empathy. The ruling class rarely shared. They observed. They curated. They reminded everyone who had the golden maze. And today, you get a viral mukbang from a CEO's daughter devouring 12 pounds of lobster while giggling about how she's so broke this month. Performance, meat privilege. It's all too familiar. But here's something softer to land on. Even in all this, ritual, hierarchy, ego, there was always a moment of warmth. Somewhere in the Aztec feast, a mother gave her child a cooked tortilla, wrapped tight, kissed on the top. Somewhere in a New Jersey food court, someone's grandma still carries a Tupperware of sliced mango just in case. Somewhere, someone offers you the last bite of something sweet, without a camera in sight.
The spectacle is real, but so is the kindness. So is the hunger for connection. And maybe that's what we're watching for.
Not the food, the feeling. The wind's cooler now. You tug your jacket closer, brushing the lingering aroma of kettle corn from your sleeve. Ahead, the road home is lit by sodium orange streetlights. But you don't walk just yet, because something's still tugging at you. A final thread of curiosity you haven't quite unraveled. The question is simple, really. Why do we enjoy watching others eat so much? You'd think it's about food. But you spent the past hour wandering through temples, food stalls, and televised pie stuffing contests, and you know better now. It's never just about the meal. You lean back against a cold stone bench and let your thoughts settle. Back in the Aztec world, meals weren't isolated events. They were built into the very structure of time. Calendrical feasts governed entire months, each devoted to a deity, a harvest, a celestial pattern. There were 20-day cycles, each with symbolic food offerings: maize, squash, cocoa, dogs, even blood. Eating was a cosmic obligation, not a choice. Now skip to today. Calendars still rule our meals. Think about it. Thanksgiving, Easter brunch, Ramadan iftar, Lunar New Year dumplings, Super Bowl nachos, Taco Tuesday, pumpkin spice season. Every culture, every platform still organizes our appetites according to ritualized time. Historians still argue whether Aztec public feasts were genuine community events or carefully staged acts of political compliance. Did the people come for devotion or out of fear of being excluded? Or worse, noticed? You see the echo in modern media. When a new food trend hits, charcoal ice cream, hot chip challenges, glittery sushi, do you join because you want to? Or because everyone else already did?
You remember that powdered skull remedy from earlier? Yeah. It was considered a medicine by some, but status display by others. Look, they said, I can afford to consume the rarest.
Cut to today. Someone live streams themselves eating a $5,000 gold leaf steak with Wagyu flown in from Kobe. It's not for nutrition. It's performance luxury. Nothing has changed. Well, one thing has.
The scale.
Aztec feast topped out at tens of thousands. Today, millions can join with a tap. Millions can watch a man cry into a Carolina Reaper taco while shouting for milk, or marvel at a tiny Japanese chef meticulously crafting a rice grain-size omelet under a macro lens.
And you know what's truly wild?
Mukbang, the Korean genre where hosts eat massive amounts of food while interacting with fans, actually began during a time of increasing loneliness. In the early 2010s, South Koreans were working long hours, eating alone, disconnected from family. So people tuned in not for the food, but the company, the human presence, the illusion of a shared table. Sound familiar?
You, right now, on your way home, just spent almost 2 hours walking through a story that is, essentially, a shared meal across time. Fringe fact incoming. In ancient Aztec feasts, there was a food priest called the Tlacatecatl, literally the Lord of Men, whose role was to oversee and bless combatants in ritualized war banquets. Yes, dinner, with a side of duel.
Compare that to today's reality cooking shows, where knives still fly, but now with added dramatic music and product placement. The structure is ancient. The stakes are modern.
And yet, underneath the theater, there's that core vulnerability again.
Eating is exposure. Your mouth opens. Your throat swallows. You trust the world not to poison you. You reveal a primal need. Publicly.
And still, we watch others do it, over and over.
You ask yourself why? Because maybe you want to be reminded that need isn't shameful.
That hunger doesn't make you weak. That you're not alone.
Watching someone eat isn't about calories. It's about witnessing desire made visible. It's strangely comforting, strangely familiar, and sometimes, yes, a little bit savage.
But maybe not in the way you first thought. Maybe the savagery isn't in what we eat.
It's in what we turn into entertainment. Who we elevate, who we shame, who we devour with judgment, who we pretend isn't starving while others hoard breadcrumbs of digital fame. The Aztecs had a word, tlazoli, which meant both garbage and sacred offering, waste and gift, cast off and sacrifice. That's how they viewed leftover food. That's how they viewed bodies sometimes. You pause, hearing the word echo inside you. Waste, gift. Maybe our appetites today still carry both meanings, especially when consumed by millions who never get full. You rise, brushing crumbs from your lap that aren't there. Your stomach isn't empty, but something deeper still is.
You smile anyway.
Because at least now you see the ritual for what it is.
Not just a spectacle, but a mirror. And in that mirror, you aren't just watching someone eat. You're watching yourself want.
You walk slower now.
The air has that mellow post-rain clarity. Cool on your skin. But wrapped in the lingering scent of earth and something slightly sweet. Like roasted maize. And maybe that's fitting. because we've arrived at the last course of tonight's feast. Not the flashiest, but the part that lingers, the part that matters most. You pass a row of shop fronts shuttered for the night. Inside one window, a flat screen plays silently on loop. A man, alone at a long table, devours 20 pounds of crawfish. No cuts, no music, just chewing. The glass mutes him completely, and yet, you can't look away.
That's the paradox, isn't it?
Silence has never stopped appetite.
Let's go back to the Great Toxcatl Festival, one of the Aztecs' most sacred occasions. In the heart of Tenochtitlan, thousands gathered to watch the ceremonial meal where a chosen warrior dressed as the god Tezcatlipoca would eat a final banquet before being sacrificed. It was reverent. It was deadly. And yes, it was entertainment.
Fast forward to today, and you have food docu-series framed like myth, lighting like a Rembrandt, narration like gospel. A Wagyu steak glistens on screen like a holy relic. A plate of caviar gets more reverence than most people do in real life. So why does it feel comforting?
Why does watching someone else bite into something crispy, tender, glazed, gooey, trigger your own memories, your own cravings, your own feelings of safety?
Some say it's mirror neurons, our brain simulating the taste even when we're just watching. Others point to ancestral memory, where communal feasting once signaled a break from danger. We survived the hunt. We get to eat. We're still here.
Historians still argue whether Aztec communal eating was more about political cohesion than genuine spiritual experience. But even they admit, sharing food is the most primal way to feel like you belong.
And maybe that's what modern food shows, YouTube mukbangs, and competitive eating contests all echo. Not the food, the ritual of watching. Think about it. Have you ever eaten while watching someone else eat on screen? It creates a strange doubling, a kind of communion. Like you're both there, together. Like the screen is the table, and for a moment, neither of you are alone.
Fringe detail you probably didn't know. Some Aztec feasts included contests not of speed eating, but delicacy. Participants were judged on how slowly and respectfully they consumed divine offerings. No burping allowed.
Yes, really. Imagine that. Today, a burp gets laughs. Then, it could get you scorned.
Culture changes. The core, still the same.
And here's a thought you maybe didn't expect to end on. Maybe food is just a metaphor for desire, for connection, for grief, for memory. The Aztecs knew this. Their food wasn't just fuel. It was cosmology. Tamales stood for wrapped secrets. Maize was the body of the gods. Chocolate, drunk bitter and spiced, was considered a warrior's tonic. And bread shaped like bones? Yeah, that wasn't Halloween. That was sacred death on your plate. And now, in your fridge, maybe there's a leftover slice of cake from your birthday, or a half-finished drink from a failed date, or a snack you swore you'd save but forgot to.
Each one, a story. Each bite, a memory in waiting. You think back to the woman on that 90s eating show, lip gloss smeared, elbows deep in ribs, and realize she was just following the script that's been around for centuries. Get messy, get loud, make the crowd roar.
Because in a world where so much is sanitized and filtered, food, especially food consumed with abandon, still feels real.
You reach your front door now. The key slides in smoothly, but you don't turn it right away.
Instead, you look up. The stars tonight are quiet. No fireworks, no pyramids, no powdered skulls, just a gentle sky above you. And for a moment, you wonder what the ancient priests would say about your last 2 hours, spending them with voices from across time, chasing echoes of feasts long buried and shows long canceled.
Would they laugh? Would they nod in recognition?
Or would they simply whisper, "Eat well, remember us"? The streets behind you fade into hush.
You're inside now. The door clicks shut, but the echoes of the feast, the contest, the laughing crowds, they linger like steam on your skin.
Let them drift.
Your shoulders ease. Your breath slows. The wild color and thunder of the night soften into candlelight tones, warm and low. Even the most ferocious rituals need their silence afterward. Even the most savage truths grow still when the story ends. You sit. The room you're in is small but safe. Maybe there's a blanket close by. Maybe there's something warm to sip. Maybe, without realizing, you already reheated that leftover rice or poured yourself a glass of water. Because your body remembers the shape of comfort. And so does your mind.
As you lie back, think about how every culture builds myths around food. How every table, no matter how humble, becomes a place of ritual. How even in the darkest stories, there's always one moment, just one, where someone offers someone else a bite, a taste, a piece.
And now, you've been offered one too.
So take it.
Let your thoughts settle like spices in broth. Let your body feel heavier than usual, in the best way. Full, but not overfed. Curious, but not chasing. Still, you made it through 2 hours of stories that spanned blood and buffets, temples and turkey legs, and now there's nothing more to do but rest. Sleep comes slowly, gently, like the hush that falls after a long, wild meal when all the plates are scraped clean and someone finally turns off the lights. You did good tonight. Close your eyes. Let the firelight go out. Let the drums fall quiet. Let the dream begin.